Hello YouTube and welcome back to my channel. My name is Dennis and today I will be making my third video regarding William Faulkner's Light in August and my impressions of the things that partook chapter 7 through 11. So I'll start off by saying that here I loved everything I read. I knew I was going to love it as soon as I started on chapter 7, and to me the first 6 chapters as opposing to the last 5, they seem to be completely different, stark differences in the style of writing, and it's almost like it's written by another author. And I think when Faulkner follows a single character, I think that is when he particularly shines as an author, as we get a very captivating tale of Joe Christmas, his upbringing all the way up to where we left him off at the fire. What I want to make this video about particularly is Joe Christmas, the character that we're following him, but in the vein of that essentially what could be taken for as hate is in fact Joe Christmas finding his own identity, forging his own life, and trying to find a woman to love. There are a few people I know that have brought on the idea that Joe Christmas hates women, and I strongly disagree with it, and this is the video that I hope to make my point as we discuss the plot movement from chapter 7 all the way through 11. So we left off Joe Christmas as we saw him being teased by children, and then we had an instance with his dietitian whose toothpaste he ate. Brian made a point in his video that that signified, or could have signified, him wanting her in a sexual way. So we see him eating the toothpaste, and then he gets sort of steamrolled by her out of his place of home, and we find that Simon McKeechin comes along and adopts him into the idea of shaping him up to be a strong man through religion, and therefore he takes him home to make a man out of him through obedience, hard work, and his devotion to God. So this is where we pick off on chapter 7, is him and his family and him undergoing the pressures from McKeechin. McKeechin gives him sort of 2 avenues. One is the avenue of learning God's Word and familiarizing himself with the books of God, memorizing, going to church, and being a good man. And the other choice is for regular, constant beatings, abuse, and violence. It is interesting, I think, that given these 2 choices, our character Joe Christmas chooses the route of abuse. We see him getting beaten at the age of 8, and then we see another case of him taking a beating at the age of 14, and he almost finds peace in these beatings because they are constant and he can depend on them. So essentially he's going for something predictable, and could possibly mean not trying to overthink this, but that he might find religion to be unreliable. I know that religion will play a big role in this in the future here, because we have left him being mad for people praying over him. So interestingly enough, religion here from the start is something that Joe Christmas turns his back on, willing to suffer the consequences for his choice. So the first woman that we see Joe Christmas interact with in these chapters is Miss McKeechin. She always tries to sort of slide him in snacks, feed him when her husband is not watching. She makes a collection for him, always leaving some pennies in his floor unit, hiding sort of his savings for him. So she's devotional to him. But he hates her, and he turns his back on her repeatedly, not wanting to fall under her prey. He always blames her. He thinks that she's trying to trick him into devotion so that he can later be punished harder. What he doesn't realize is that she's just trying to protect him. And I think his relationship with her is very influenced by the origins of him. I think when he was originally under the care of the dietitian, him sort of innocently coming in between her and her men, I think has left a scar on him. And also the idea that he came between his mother and whoever she had the affair of by being born, I think shapes him in a way where he doesn't want to come between Miss McEachin and her husband Simon, who constantly whips him. So therefore he turns a cold shoulder on her for that main reason, is that he doesn't want to come in between two people again and be forced to find another home. So he's okay with taking the beatings, and he's okay with shutting her out, I think, for this reason. And I think it will play an important part here. His next interaction was with a woman is at the age of 14, when a bunch of boys here take on and hire a prostitute in a shack or in a dark place. And they go in one by one, taking turns at doing what is considered boys' stuff. You could say stuff about this idea, but you know, it's part of our history, and I think Faulkner is just trying to capture that. So at this first encounter, he's encountering somebody who has no bearing on his place of home, and we see, I think, his anger over everything boil up here. And this person is the first person who's kind of there to take it. I think essentially he's disappointed her for taking some of his friends before him, and just in general for hoarding. Just in general for allowing herself to be taken advantage of. So he gets into a rage which he can't control, he says. And I think when somebody can't control their rage, it's not instantaneous, it's something that is built up over a long time. And I think he's just taking his general frustrations out, the frustrations that he had with women, on her, for her acts in kind of deflowering herself or letting boys use her, a part of her that should be sacred. The second girl that he gets involved with is a prostitute by the name of Miss Bobby, and he meets her at the local kind of diner when McEachin takes him into town, and after that he revisits the diner a couple of more times, where he forges a relationship with her. He jeopardizes a lot for this relationship. He puts himself at risk by selling a cow that was given to him, but he doesn't believe he has full ownership of, or he doubts it. Then you have the instance of him getting a suit. Also the instance of him taking money that has been stored for him in order to make her happy. This allows him time with her, as she's the only kind of prostitute in the joint, but her family, or the family that are kind of pimping her out, they agree that she's allowed to spend time with him as much as she's gaining a beneficial value out of it. We see him also kill for her. He kills Simon McEachin on the idea that he may come in between them at a dance. And so when he arrives there and challenges his authority on making Joe Christmas go back home, Joe Christmas kills him at the dance. And then we're taking a flurry of scenes where he rushes back home, tells her to drive home in her car, and we watch him run into the house, grab his belongings. I think it's important to remember that he does no harm onto Miss McEachin. Eventually we're brought onto a scene where he's traveling with his horse to Miss Bobby's house, and his horse is sort of not being able to keep up the pace, and slowly slows down even more until it falls over and can't carry him. His frustration is taken out on the horse. He beats it repeatedly. He almost bashes his head in and kills the animal on the side of the road. I think it's an important part here. I think this horse speaks to a lot. I think the horse symbolizes his past, the life on the farm, and his want to transition into his own life and move away from that life. And the horse sort of slowing down is almost reminiscent of his progress being slowed down. So when he takes out this aggression, it's the aggression of what the horse symbolizes. Because when we meet him in chapters 2 through 6, he's often driving a new car, a vehicle, a mechanical vehicle, as his want is to be of the city life. Then we watch him come upon the house. He's rejected again. She blames him for jeopardizing her kind of business, and they have to all dodge town, her and her well takers, and he gets beat up again. Almost every time you see violence towards Joe Christmas, you notice that he doesn't grimace. He almost accepts it. I think that in his eyes, violence is a lot less cruel than in the eyes of other people. I think that's an important part of when he's exerting violence. Perhaps he's not thinking that he's doing as much damage as he is, and perhaps he finds violence common day occurrence, and that's why in all these scenes that we do see him witness it on himself, you always see him with a straight face. It's interesting to see how much pain, or to contemplate how much pain threshold he has, as opposed to the normal people that he meets. Also, another interesting thing that I think is kind of interesting to look upon here is that the woman, again, another married woman, just like Miss McEachin, it's the married woman that is kind of showing him support, right? He gets sort of the support from the married women. So it's important to think of what does he want. Perhaps he himself is looking for that woman who can give him support in life, but have it be his own woman. You know, he is searching for somebody to love. I mean, I generally think this is a quest in these chapters of a young man growing up looking for love. You can laugh all you want. You can tell me that, oh, Joe Christmas is nothing but hate. But I think at the center core here, the women that he experiences through his eyes are all nurturing, but they're all nurturing to other men. And he sees all these other men exude violence. So therefore, I think in his head, he realizes that he has to exude violence himself in order to attain this love from a woman. And you will always notice that he's not ever hitting on women with other men. In fact, when the woman he's interested with, he sees with other men, it is the violence that he does unto them. So he's trying to find a single woman who he can find a love with and that nurture that has come across throughout his life from other married women that he can never attain for himself. Finally, we come across him making multiple journeys, and just kind of the scenes are sped forward, and when we're told that he's been on the train a long time and that he's stopped in multiple cities, sometimes poor, sometimes rich. And again, Faulkner makes us pay attention to that this whole time, where he mentions he's been with prostitutes, so he's been around women. I think that if we're going to make a case that Joe Christmas hates women, why is Faulkner always painting him around women? Does a man who hates women sort of interact with women his whole life, or does he perhaps just get a, like Mr. Bunch Byron Bunch? Does he get a kind of a room in a border house like Mr. Byron Bunch and stick away from society? I would like to read something from page 225 where Faulkner describes Joe Christmas to us during this time when he's traveling on trains as he has escaped his town after killing Mr. Eachron and after getting rejected by Miss Bobby. So he's on these trains, and this is what Faulkner writes. That was while he was still in, comparatively speaking, South, because one night it did not work. He rose from the bed and told the woman that he was a Negro. You are, she said. I thought maybe you were just another wop or something. She looked at him without particular interest. Then she evidently saw something in his face. She said, what about it? You look all right. You ought to see the shine I turned out just before your turn came. She was looking at him. She was quiet still now. Say, what do you think this dump is anyhow? The Ritz Hotel? Then she quit talking. She was watching his face, and she began to move backwards slowly before him, staring at him, her face draining, her mouth open to scream. Then she did scream. It took 2 policemen to subdue him. At first, they thought that the woman was dead. So I think it's interesting here that I don't know if Faulkner is trying to plant a seed in our head that he is enforcing his anger on all these women prostitutes that partake in interracial sex. So here he has a white woman who says that she sleeps with black men, and if you notice that the white boys hired out was black and they were white. And I am very curious here to see if he is mad maybe at this subconsciously because he comes from kind of a prostitute who was either white and took a black man to create him, or maybe a prostitute that was black and serviced a white man. So I just think that the instances here are often with interracial sex when it comes to the prostitutes that Faulkner puts around him. And I'm wondering if that is a clue. Again, it could just be Faulkner trying to throw us off the track. But I find it very interesting that these kind of interracial relationships or these interracial sexual acts are the thing that causes anger to Joe Christmas. Finally, we stumble upon Miss Burton. She lives in a house that he approaches when he gets off the trains in Jefferson, and he learns of her occupying this house. And I think it's also important that we look at the first thing he asks of a person walking by who lets him know of the residents of this house. So I will read to you just a little short clip here. He stopped the boy. Who lives in the big house back there, he said. That's where Miss Burton stay at. Mr. and Miss Burton? So look at the first question he asked, right? He asked if she's staying with a man, because we see him throughout the story, throughout these chapters, now want to get involved with women who are with men. And I think it's interesting that when he learns that she's alone there, he instantly takes up interest. So what does he ask the second question? Oh, an old woman, I guess. So now he wants to know her age, right? Could she be a possible interest to him, to attaining this kind of nurture from a woman that he has lacked all the way from day one when his mother left him on the doorstep? No, sir, Miss Burton ain't old, ain't young neither, and she lives there by herself. Don't she get scared? Who's going to harm her? Right there in town? Colored folks around here look after her. Again, he's colored. He believes he's colored. And this belief is so strong in his head that we see him in moments of weakness revealed to everybody he's ever met that literally, it's him who's doing himself the most harm. And I think here, I will leave off my interpretations here, but in general, I think we're seeing a character here who, due to his past, takes actions that are predictable while he's on a search for love. But this love can't kind of get out of the harm's way of all the anger and hatred that he's countered in his life, that has buried this love to the point where he doesn't even understand it himself. I will leave off with that because I think I've talked way too much. And if you guys want to see another great review of other points from this book, I think Brian does a great one. Also follow Alan's channel. His videos are great, but what I look forward to most from him is to the video responses he does to my and Alan's interpretation of what we've read. So I will leave off here saying that at this point I'm sold on Faulkner, 100% artist. He is just amazing how simple his story reads, but how much is packed inside here that allows for just endless discussions and different points to be made. So look forward to my next video. I think we'll be reading from chapters 12 to whatever the next 5 chapters are, I think 17. And I look forward to getting back and giving you my further thoughts of this text. Have a good one, guys.